Have you ever had this experience? You're looking for something and you just can't find it. You've turned the room upside down, you've opened every drawer, you've moved every paper, you just can't find what you're looking for. And so you leave the room, and a little while later, you come back and boop, there it is, right there. It was there all along, you just didn't see it. That's kind of frustrating. It's even worse when you're digging through everything and looking for something and someone else comes in and says, well, it's right over there. It's an odd thing. Sometimes something can be right in front of us, but we don't actually see it. That happened one time with the girls. I honestly don't remember which one it was, but one of them was searching their room for something, and I said, if I can come in and find it in less than 20 seconds, you owe me $5. I went in and boop, there it was right there. I don't remember which one that was. Maybe I ought to just collect $5 from each of them. That's a good idea. Anyway, I think sometimes that happens to us spiritually too. I think sometimes we don't see what's actually going on. We see what we think is going on. We see what we're worried about that is going on. We see things that just aren't real rather than seeing things that are actual and true. Jesus said lots of times that when we are spiritually healthy, we will see things properly. And seeing things properly then allows us to react properly and respond properly and live properly. And so the sermon this week is going to try and help us to regain our spiritual vision, to see things properly, to see things the way God sees them. The sermon is called The Challenge of Seeing What You're Looking At. And it's going to have lots of stories and lots of things you can relate to and lots of things that you can just put right into practice. Seeing better will help us live better. That's the goal for this Sunday. In 2 Samuel chapters 11 and 12, we come across one of the saddest stories in the Old Testament. Last week we looked at a really good story about David. David was very kind to someone he didn't need to be kind to. But this week we get the other side of the story. We don't get a story about how great David was. We get a story about his greatest failure. It's the story of David and Bathsheba. And we're probably going to spend a couple of weeks on this story. This isn't one we want to just race over. Not because we want to skewer David and talk about how horrible he was and just sort of make a mockery of him. That's not the point. But this story is a good warning for us in lots of different ways. We live in a society that is very filled with things that entice our own desires. Lust is not a problem around us most of the time. In fact, lustful thoughts and lustful things are forced towards us a lot. We need to talk about that. We don't talk about that enough, but we need to figure out what to do. What is lust in any way? What does that even mean? How do we know when we're in the wrong spot? How do we know when we've crossed that line? How do we know how to deal with it? What should we be doing? That's a good discussion and one we're going to have this coming Sunday. We're also going to talk about the problem that David has, not only in making the first mistake, but in then trying to cover up the mistake. We're going to talk about the value of repentance, about owning our mistakes, about fixing things quickly, about asking for forgiveness. We're going to see all the things David did wrong. And again, it's not going to be just a shooting gallery on David and talking about how horrible he was, but we've got to see this stuff. We've got to learn from other people's mistakes. We've got to keep our wits about us because David made a huge mistake and it's not beyond us to do similar things. So we're going to take quite a bit of time in these next couple of chapters talking about what he did, talking about what he failed to do in terms of correcting it, and then talking about how he actually got back on track, which is really a good part of the story too, and how he found God's forgiveness and went on and still was a man after God's own heart. That's a wonderfully redemptive story too, so we'll talk about that as well. But this week we'll be in the first part of 2 Samuel chapter 11. Again, as always, until the spring, there is lunch being served. Please bring enough for your family and one more family. We've had lots of food lately. That's really nice. So please continue to do that. The fellowship is the big part, though. Please stay and visit. You really miss something if you don't get to know each other, if you don't get to visit, if you don't get to catch up. So please hang around and visit. I want to visit with you. Give me a chance. So please make plans to stay if you're able to. Once again, I'm thinking we have some practical things to say, some encouraging things to say. We've got some lessons that you could bring your neighbor to hear, and they would find value in it too, I think. We'll see you Sunday.